Today in SketchUp, I'm going to show you how to make a sculpture garden, more specifically one geometric and abstract sculpture. So we're going to go over to SketchUp, which we have to go to File, New in. It may ask you what template you want, and because we're in America, you're going to choose feet and inches, and then press Start. All right, so once we're in SketchUp, this is going to be our toolbar, and this is going to be the area where we work. We're going to keep this guy here. He's going to help us with scale, meaning that we want to make things of a specific size, basically about the size of a car compared to him. And each sculpture is going to be around that size. We don't want to make things too big. They should be things large enough for him to climb on, but not so large that he is a tiny ant compared to them, because we're not making buildings yet. That's later. So, as I was speaking, hopefully you saw some examples of a sculpture garden. So now I'm going to show you how to use some of these tools in SketchUp. I'm first using one of our shape tools. This is the rectangle or square tool. It can make both. So I'm just going to use it to click and release, and then click again to create a two-dimensional shape. It has a length and a width, but it doesn't have a height. So I'm going to give it some height right now using my 3D. It's called the push-pull tool, and it brings things into 3D for us. So you can see how easy and awesome it is to make things in SketchUp. So I'm now going to use my orbit tool because I want to show you around the cube-like object I just made. And this is the orbit tool right here. It allows me to go around in space. So very useful tool. Another navigation tool is the pan tool, and it's shaped like a hand. You could use it to grab the page and move it side to side, up, down, left, right, diagonal, but not in three-dimensional space. This is the zoom tool, which I really already have on my mouse. I could put the cursor on an object, and if I scroll, it'll zoom to that object or to that place where I put it. So it's a very useful thing to know. The last thing I want to show is if you ever zoom out too far away from your object, you could use this zoom extends tool to bring you back to your artwork full page, and then navigate from there to work. All right, so now that I made this three-dimensional cube in SketchUp, I want to talk about size really quick. I mentioned that I want each object to be about the size or mass of a car. So this is about right. However, what your reflex is going to be, inevitably this seems to happen, is people seem to use their push-pull tool, which is what I'm using now, to push and pull their objects. And as they make them bigger and bigger and bigger. So maybe by the time you're on like the third sculpture, or maybe the fifth sculpture that you're going to make because you're making a whole garden of them, you might have something this huge. Now, if I pull around and I see my person, this is more like a building. And some people go even bigger than that because they're like, it's kind of like a reflex, or their nature, it seems, to keep making bigger things. This is like a city block. If I were to take a picture of this person, I wouldn't even recognize who it is if I were taking it this far away. I'm going to Command Z now to step backwards in time. I want to make it so it's an object that's small enough that he could climb on it and he could be in the picture with the whole object. So that, whoops, is about right. Using my zoom extends tool, I'm going to zoom right to him. All right, so I also call that the lost tool, because when you're lost and everything is really far away, you could find your way back just by clicking that tool. All right, so I'm going to go through a couple more of the shape tools with you, and we're going to turn this boring cube into a more interesting geometric sculpture. So the easiest way to do that is to use your shape tools to overlap one shape on another. So right now I'm putting a circle on a cube. All right, so there are two things that my shape tools create. They create surfaces, which is the part that's highlighted in blue right now. There are many surfaces in this drawing. And it also creates edges. The edges are the lines that create your shapes. So for example, this is an edge here, and in the middle of this circular edge is a surface. With the push-pull tool, I could pull that or extrude it into 3D, or I could push it inward so that it goes through the back of the object. When I do that, I'm going to orbit so you can see what's happening. It's basically making a hole in the object and then pulling it through the other side inside out. And that's a fun thing to do. I'm going to Command Z though, because I want to show you another option. So I'm going to Command Z to step backwards in time. All right, and I did that twice. So now if I push-pull the same shape and I just hover right over here on the edge, it'll say on edge, and that's the back edge of the object, when I let go, it becomes a hole because it knows to bring it to exactly that point. So that's why I hovered over that. All right, so now that I have a hole in a cube, that's not a very interesting sculpture, although at least it's something he could crawl through. I'm going to go to the other sides and start making other shapes. So I grabbed my polygon tool, which right now is set to hexagon. I'm going to pull that out into 3D, and I'm going to go to my rectangle tool again, and I'm going to make a couple squares over here, and I'm going to pull them out into 3D. So now my sculpture is looking a little bit more interesting. I'm trying to create some variation with these shape tools. And now I want to stress that I'm going to make another hexagon. I want to stress that that SketchUp allows you to pull out every surface. So I could grab any surface of any of the shapes that I made and pull them out into 3D. And the only reason that they wouldn't be able to go is if they're stopped by something else. You can see this edge is stopping that. So I can't go that far. But I can pull out every area into 3D. So it's a really fun thing to play with. So now I have some interesting shapes. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the cube, 7 shapes. But I always want to use at least 10 when I'm making a sculpture, preferably more than 10. This is the arch tool. It works a little bit differently. In fact, I'm going to escape from it and explain what I just did. The arch is an incomplete shape. If I use it, or the arc is an incomplete shape. If I use it by itself, it won't turn colors, which means I cannot bring it into 3D, because that's basically a line. To be able to pull something in 3D, I Command Z that, by the way, you have to have a complete shape. So I could go on an edge and click the edge once to start my arc, and then click again where I want the arc to end. And then I could decide how I want the arc to be. Do I want it to come out of the object like this? So see, or come from the object, laying down on the object, or do I want my arc to be standing up in 3D? And that is what I want. So I'm going to try and make that happen. I need to make it like the blue axis to make that happen. So I'm going to press escape and orbit a little bit, because sometimes you have to remind SketchUp how you want it to go, and I want it to go up. So now I'm able to move up. All right, so then I could pull that shape into 3D. And my sculpture is looking pretty interesting so far. I think I want to make sure that I get something done on each side though. So I'm going to do this. And I'm also going to use my pencil tool, which is right here. The pencil tool also creates incomplete shapes, so you need other edges to work with to be able to use it. So I just drew a line there, and I'm going to push that through into 3D. And here I have a pretty interesting geometric shape. Check out the next video so you can learn a little bit more about the pencil tool. And for now, practice with your shape tools and using simple lines to cut your shapes into things like triangles.